Undercover boss purchases a laptop from his own store, shocked by the salesman's blatant lie. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. And tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The laptop on the display table read $849 in bold, clean print. No fine print, no hidden asterisk. Just 849, clear as day. But when the salesman opened his mouth, the number changed. 1400, Troy said confidently, pointing at the exact same model. Best deal you'll find this week. The words didn't match the sign. They didn't even try. For a second, the customer in front of him, an ordinary man in a plain gray t-shirt and baseball cap, froze. His eyes darted between the glowing price tag and the salesman's practiced smile. It wasn't just the lie. It was how natural it sounded, as if this wasn't the first time, as if doubling the price was simply part of the script. He cleared his throat quietly. Are you sure? The tag says $849. Troy didn't flinch. That's the old tag. You don't want the defective version, right? The real one's 14. His tone didn't waver. His posture didn't shake, and no one around them seemed surprised. Another shopper browsed quietly 2 aisles down. A trainee in a crisp but oversized polo glanced over, then looked away. No one spoke up. That's how most wrongs survive. Not because people fight for them, but because people accept them in silence. And that morning, in store number 47 of a national electronics chain, Jackson Reeve was sitting right there, disguised as just another customer. Jackson wasn't looking for discounts. He wasn't even looking for a laptop. What he wanted was the truth. The real truth about how his own stores treated the very people who walked in believing the signs on the wall. At 52, he'd built the company from a single warehouse outlet into a network that stretched across states. He knew the spreadsheets, the margins, the growth numbers. But numbers don't show deception. They don't reveal the cracks in the floor. So here he was, plain cap, worn sneakers, a wallet with just enough cash to pass as ordinary. No one recognized the man who had signed off every quarterly earnings report for the past 20 years. And that was exactly how he wanted it. He leaned in slightly, keeping his voice calm. So you're saying this model right here costs $1,400? Troy nodded firmly. If you want quality, yes. Otherwise, you're better off leaving it. The lie landed heavy, not because it was shocking, but because it was casual, effortless. And if it was that effortless with him, a stranger, then how many customers had already paid the inflated price without realizing? Jackson's eyes flicked toward the trainee again. She was stocking boxes on the lower shelf, pretending not to listen, but her hands moved slower than they needed to. The kind of hesitation that comes from wanting to say something and knowing you can't. In that pause, Jackson saw the first crack. Not in the product, not in the price tag, but in the system he thought he knew. He didn't call Troy out. Not yet. He didn't argue or demand. Instead, he asked one more question, voice steady, almost casual. And if I wanted to check the system myself? Troy chuckled under his breath. Customers don't get access to that. You'll just have to take my word for it. Jackson nodded slowly. He set the laptop back down, letting the silence stretch between them. On the surface, it looked like nothing, just a man considering a purchase. But inside, the first threads of an investigation were already pulling tight, because behind that plain cap and calm face stood the founder of the company, and every override, every false number, every casual lie was about to be traced, documented, and exposed. This wasn't just a sale. This was the beginning of an audit. Jackson didn't push the issue that morning. He walked out of store number 47 like any other customer who'd been priced out, a plain figure fading into the parking lot. But inside his head, the numbers wouldn't leave him alone. 849 printed, 1,400 spoken. How many times had that happened before? Back in his truck, Jackson pulled the visor down, setting the receiptless bag on the passenger seat. Not a purchase, just silence. He pulled out an old notebook, the kind he carried long before apps and dashboards. A single line filled the page. Laptop tag $849. Salesman override to $1,400. No system check offered. He underlined the word override twice. The drizzle on the windshield blurred the store's glowing logo as he sat there longer than he needed to. He didn't come here for a laptop. He came for clarity. And today, he got just enough to know clarity was going to take work. Later that night, Jackson logged into the company's private admin portal, not as the CEO, but through a test account built years ago for internal audits. A quiet corner of the system most executives forgot existed. He filtered transactions from store number 47 for the past 90 days. The pattern was faint, but it was there. Price overrides. 143 instances. Median increase. 65%. This wasn't a mistake. This was a method. He took a slow breath and reached for his phone. "Mara," he said when the line picked up. No introduction needed. She had been the company's head of internal investigations for nearly a decade. "I need a quiet audit on POS logs. Store 47. Pull everything roll assignments, override histories, refund patterns. Don't alert local staff." "Understood," she replied simply. That was all. 3 days later, the first findings came in. Finding number 1. The store's POS system showed a custom access tier labeled Preferred Internal. Not visible on the public staff screen. Not part of corporate policy, but active. Finding number 2. The access tier was tied to 3 accounts. Troy, the salesman, Brad Coleman, the store manager, and a third user labeled Support 02, which didn't match any HR record. Finding number 3. Of all laptop sales in the last month, nearly 70% involved manual overrides, with inflated prices averaging $400 above listed tags. Jackson closed the report quietly, but the silence around him felt heavier. This wasn't just about one lie. This was a system within the system. A shadow rule written by people who thought no one was watching. The next morning, Jackson returned to store number 47. Same cap, same plain shirt, another ordinary day. He walked the aisles slowly, not toward Troy this time, but toward the trainee. Emily, that was her name stitched on the corner of her badge. She looked up, surprised to see the same man again. He lowered his voice. "You stocked these shelves yesterday, right?" She nodded cautiously. "Did the price tags change?" Her eyes flicked toward the counter where Troy stood joking with another employee. She hesitated, then whispered, "The tags never change. Only the register does." Jackson studied her face. No malice, no agenda. Just the quiet honesty of someone who didn't want to lose her job but couldn't stand the lie either. He gave the smallest nod, then stepped back, as if he'd only asked about directions. But inside, the evidence was building layer by layer. That evening, a fresh file from Mara landed in his inbox. Line by line, it showed how the overrides worked. A manual code entered under Preferred Internal rerouted the sales ledger. The system marked it as a premium warranty adjustment, though no warranty was ever added. Each week, the difference hundreds at a time was funneled through a shell account disguised as Support Services Logistics, LLC. On paper, it looked like a third-party fee. In reality, it was money siphoned straight out of customer pockets. Jackson leaned back in his chair, the glow of the laptop screen casting lines across his tired face. He thought of the man yesterday, nodding at Troy's lie, pulling out a credit card without hesitation. He thought of Emily, stocking shelves, watching in silence. A company can survive bad quarters. It can recover from competition. But when trust at the counter is replaced with theft, that's when the foundation starts to rot. And now he knew. The rot had a name, a system, and a signature. Jackson closed the laptop softly. He wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger is loud. What he felt was quieter, sharper, clarity. This investigation wasn't over. It was only beginning. The following week, Jackson drove back to store number 47, the morning sun breaking through thin clouds. He didn't rush inside. He stayed in his truck a few extra minutes, flipping through the photos he had taken of the audit logs. Each number told the same story: overrides, inflated charges, false fees. This time, he wasn't here to test the system. He was here to watch it in action, one more time, with his own eyes. From a corner table near the laptop display, Jackson kept his cap low. Customers moved in and out, hands brushing sleek boxes, eyes scanning price tags. And then, just as before, Troy appeared. Same polished smile, same quick hands guiding customers toward the higher-end models. Jackson watched carefully. A middle-aged man in a work jacket pointed at the same laptop that had started it all. $849, right? He asked. Troy didn't blink. That's the base unit. Defective batch. If you want the version that actually works, it's 14. The man frowned but hesitated, clearly unsure. Jackson saw the conflict in his eyes. Trust the tag, or trust the confident salesman. In the end, the customer nodded, pulling out his wallet. Jackson felt a familiar chill. It wasn't the money, it was the theft of dignity, the small erosion of trust that multiplied with every transaction. When the customer walked away, receipt in hand, Jackson approached the counter slowly, coffee cup in hand. He spoke casually, like a stranger making small talk. "Busy morning," he said. Troy smirked. "Always. People will pay for quality." Jackson let the silence hang. He looked down at the register screen, catching a glimpse as Troy tapped through the override menu. The words "warranty adjustment" flashed briefly before disappearing. That was the evidence, not in spreadsheets or reports, but in the movement of a single finger on a touchscreen. Later that afternoon, Jackson sat in a quiet booth at a diner 2 blocks away, waiting for the next report from Mara. When it arrived, it confirmed what he had just seen. Finding number 4. Override codes were set not by corporate standards, but by custom roles created locally. Finding number 5. Transactions flagged as warranty adjustments had spiked 320% in this single location, with no corresponding warranty claims ever filed. Finding number 6. Funds siphoned through Support Services Logistics, LLC, traced back to an email address once used by Brad Coleman, the current store manager. It was no longer a suspicion. It was proof. That night, Jackson picked up the phone and dialed Mara again. His voice was calm, measured. "Put the system in silent audit mode," he said. "Track every override live. No alerts, no warnings. I want full visibility without tipping anyone off." "Consider it done," Mara replied. Within the hour, store number 47 was being monitored from the inside out. To the staff, the day-to-day continued. As usual, sales, returns, inventory checks. But every keystroke, every override, every hidden transaction was now recorded. Over the next 2 days, the audit painted a darker picture than even Jackson expected. Troy wasn't acting alone. 2 other employees had been given restricted access, funneled through Brad Coleman's admin privileges. Together, they had siphoned nearly $240,000 over the past year. And yet, on the sales floor, it looked ordinary. A smile here, a suggestion there. Nothing loud, nothing messy, just quiet theft, normalized, repeated. Jackson thought back to something he had said to new managers years ago. If you want to know whether a store is healthy, don't look at revenue. Look at whether your staff can tell the truth without fear. And here, the truth had been silenced. On the 3rd morning, Jackson returned again, this time without the cap. No more disguises. He walked through the sliding doors in a pressed shirt, steady, deliberate. For the first time, people noticed. Heads turned. Emily, stocking shelves near the back, froze mid-step, recognition flickering in her eyes. Jackson didn't stop until he reached the counter. He placed a folder on the desk, thick with audit printouts. "Troy," he said evenly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by the customers nearby. "Yesterday, you told a man this laptop cost $1,400, but the system says $849, and the audit says you've been doing this for months." The words cut through the store like a blade. Conversations paused. A receipt printer hummed, and then fell silent. Troy blinked, caught off guard. Who are you?" Jackson didn't answer right away. He let the silence do its work. Then he placed a business card on the counter, face up. Jackson Reeves, founder and CEO. The store went still. The room held its breath. The card on the counter glinted under the fluorescent lights, just a small piece of paper, but heavier than anything Troy had ever seen. His mouth opened, but no words came. Behind him, the register screen still glowed, frozen mid-transaction, warranty adjustment highlighted in pale blue. Evidence, sitting in plain sight. Customers shifted uneasily. One man cleared his throat, stepping back from the counter. Emily, at the end of the aisle, stared with wide eyes, a stack of boxes slipping slightly in her arms. Jackson didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I built this company on trust," he said quietly. "And you've been selling lies." Troy stammered. I was just following instructions." His eyes flicked toward the back office, where a glass door stood half open. The shadow of Brad Coleman moved inside, pacing slowly. Jackson followed the glance, then turned back. Instructions or excuses? His tone stayed calm, but the weight behind it pressed the room into silence. Moments later, Brad stepped out. Crisp shirt, polished shoes, the kind of manager who looked the part. He smiled, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sir, is there a problem here?" Jackson placed a stack of audit pages on the counter. Numbers, timestamps, access logs, line after line of proof. "You tell me," he replied. Brad's expression tightened for just a fraction of a second. Then the practiced calm returned. "These documents, they must be a mistake. Overrides are part of the system. Customers misunderstand prices all the time." Jackson didn't blink. $240,000 in misunderstandings? Routed through an account you registered under Support Services Logistics LLC? Should I keep going? The smile cracked. Brad's shoulders stiffened. "You have no right to accuse me like this in front of my staff." Jackson leaned forward slightly, voice steady. "I'm not accusing. I'm exposing." The customers in the store weren't looking at laptops anymore. They were watching the counter, watching the confrontation unfold. A woman whispered, "He's the CEO?" Another man muttered, "All those prices. No wonder." Emily set the boxes down carefully and stepped closer. Her voice trembled but held steady. "It's true," she said softly. "The tags never changed. Only the register did." Her words broke something open. Another employee glanced at Brad, then at Jackson. His silence said enough. Jackson picked up one page from the audit stack and slid it forward. Every override, every false warranty code, every account tied to your access. You thought the system wouldn't catch it. You thought silence would protect you. Brad's jaw tightened. "This is out of context." Jackson's reply was sharp, precise. Context is customers walking and believing the price they see. Context is employees being told to stay quiet or lose hours. Context is you turning trust into profit, and I will not allow it. Brad's voice rose for the first time, brittle with frustration. "You can't do this. You need authorization from corporate." Jackson's gaze stayed locked on him. "I am corporate." The words landed like a verdict. The room froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed louder in the silence that followed. Jackson pulled out his phone, pressing a single button. A clear voice echoed through the speaker. "Mara, head of investigations. Audit complete. Findings verified. Store number 47 has been placed under compliance lockdown." The customers exchanged glances. The employees looked down at the floor. Brad's face drained of color. "Effective immediately," Jackson continued, his voice calm but unshakable. "Brad Coleman is suspended pending further review. Troy, your access to the POS is revoked. Both of you will leave this floor now." Security from headquarters had already been briefed. Two plain-clothed officers stepped forward from the side entrance, waiting silently. Brad sputtered, "This is a mistake." Jackson cut him off with a steady hand. The mistake was thinking no one was watching. Emily stood rooted near the counter, eyes wide, hands clasped tight. Jackson turned slightly, meeting her gaze. For the first time, his tone softened. "You told the truth. That matters more than you know." She swallowed hard, nodding. The store's atmosphere shifted. What had begun as an ordinary morning had turned into a reckoning. Customers who had been browsing quietly now watched openly, their expressions a mix of disbelief and vindication. Jackson gathered the stack of audit papers, placing them back in the folder. His final words carried across the floor. "A business can recover from lost sales. It can recover from competition. But it cannot survive when trust is stolen from the people it serves. And that ends here." "Oh," With that, he stepped back, letting the silence fall heavy. Brad and Troy stood exposed, stripped not by shouting, but by evidence and truth. And the room knew it. Brad's protest faded into silence as the security officers guided him toward the office. Troy trailed behind, shoulders slumped, the confident swagger gone. The doors closed behind them with a muted thud. For a long moment, no one moved. The store felt weightless, caught between what it had been and what it was about to become. Then Jackson spoke, his voice low but steady. "This store doesn't belong to liars," he said. "It belongs to people who tell the truth, even when it costs them." His eyes found Emily again. She stood rigid, like she wasn't sure if she'd just witnessed justice or if she was dreaming. "You," Jackson said softly, "didn't stay silent. That matters." A flicker of relief crossed her face, but also fear. "I didn't want to cause trouble," she whispered. "I just needed to know I wasn't crazy." "Oh," Jackson stepped closer, lowering his tone so only she could hear. "You weren't crazy. You were right. And people like you are the reason this company survives." Later that afternoon, back in his office, miles away from store number 47, Jackson reviewed the final audit file. Every override, every phantom account, every misdirected dollar, it was all cataloged. The compliance team had already frozen transactions tied to Support Services Logistics LLC. Legal would dismantle the shell entity within the week. But what stayed with him wasn't the paperwork. It was Emily's voice, trembling yet firm. The tags never changed. Only the register did. That sentence said more about the health of his company than any quarterly report ever could. The next morning, Jackson returned to store number 47 this time. Not in disguise, not undercover, but openly as the man who owned it. Employees gathered nervously near the front. Emily lingered at the back, trying to blend in, but Jackson motioned her forward. "You all deserve to hear this," he began. "The system here was abused. Customers were lied to. Trust was stolen. And some of you stayed silent because you were afraid. That ends today." He paused, letting the words settle. "Brad Coleman is no longer your manager. Troy will not return. Compliance protocols have been reset. From now on, every transaction is transparent. No hidden tiers. No phantom rolls. If the tag says 849, the register says 849. A murmur rippled through the room. Relief. Caution. Hope. Jackson turned to Emily. "And as for those who chose honesty," he handed her a slim envelope. Inside was a letter of promotion shift lead, with authority to train new hires on ethics and compliance. Her hands shook as she held it. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say the truth," Jackson replied simply. Every day, to every customer. News of the suspension spread quickly. Customers who had once doubted price tags began to return, reassured by the CEO's presence. Some even stopped by to thank Emily, the quiet trainee who had spoken up when no one else did. Jackson stayed only long enough to see the first honest transactions flow through the system again. Laptops scanned, tags matched, receipts printed clean. Ordinary, simple, exactly the way it should have been all along. That evening, driving away from store number 47, Jackson reflected on what had unfolded. He thought of all the times he had told his managers, "You don't need to catch everything in the reports. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. Listen to the smallest voices. They'll tell you what the numbers never will." This time, the smallest voice had been a trainee with a badge too big for her shirt, holding a stack of boxes and a heart full of doubt. And she had been right. As the sun dipped low over the highway, Jackson's voiceover carried the final message. A company doesn't fail because of competition. It fails when it stops seeing the people who hold it together. Trust isn't built in boardrooms. It's built at the counter. One customer, one employee, one truth at a time. And when trust is stolen, it must be restored not with words, but with action. The camera of memory lingered one last time on Emily sliding a fresh price tag into place. $849, glowing clearly under the store lights. She looked up, catching Jackson's eye through the glass. For the first time, she smiled without hesitation. This wasn't just the end of an investigation. It was the beginning of repair. The next week, store number 47 looked different. Not in the layout, not in the merchandise, but in the way people carried themselves. The weight of secrecy was gone. Transactions were ordinary, again, scan, tag, print. No whispered adjustments. No second-guessing what the price really meant. Customers noticed it first. One man stopped at the register, holding his receipt in both hands like it was proof. "$8.49, he said, pointing at the number. Same as the tag. Finally, his relief sounded almost absurd, but everyone behind him in line nodded quietly. They had all felt the difference, even if they hadn't had the words for it. Jackson didn't stay long. He walked the aisles one last time, taking in the ordinary rhythm. Emily passed by with a clipboard now, not just stocking shelves but checking compliance tags, making sure everything lined up. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, not loud, but steady. The kind of presence that didn't need recognition to matter. Back at headquarters, the reports from Mara kept coming in. Silent audits across 5 other stores flagged similar patterns, smaller, less organized, but echoes of the same scheme. Manual overrides. Warranty codes misused. False accounts buried in the system. The exposure of store number 47 hadn't just cleaned one floor. It had triggered a system-wide review. Jackson read the numbers carefully, his pen scratching notes in the margin. This wasn't just about catching thieves. It was about making sure the structure itself couldn't be bent that way again. He gathered his executive team in the conference room. No speeches, no theatrics, just plain directives. "From this day forward," he said, "no employee can assign custom access roles. Overrides require dual confirmation, one from the floor, one from corporate. Every receipt is transparent. Every adjustment is logged and visible." The room was quiet. They understood. Still, Jackson's thoughts drifted back to the moment at the counter. Troy fumbling for excuses, Brad's denial collapsing in real time, Emily whispering the truth when no one else dared. That was the core of it, the smallest voices, the simplest words, cutting sharper than any spreadsheet. That evening, he wrote her name by hand on a note card. "Promote Emily Harris to Compliance Trainer National Rollout." He slid it into the stack for HR, no fanfare attached. She wouldn't just be rewarded, she would become the example, the reminder that honesty wasn't weakness but the backbone of the company. Weeks later, Jackson returned quietly to store number 47. No cameras, no entourage, just a man checking in. Emily was training 2 new hires at the laptop display. He watched from a distance as she pointed at the price tags, then at the register, explaining how to double-check entries. Her voice was calm, but firm. "If the numbers don't match, we don't process. We stop. We fix it. That's the rule." The trainees nodded. One scribbled notes nervously. Emily smiled reassuringly, the kind of smile that carried weight because it came from lived experience. Jackson turned away before she saw him. He didn't need thanks. He just needed to know the lesson had rooted itself here, in the place where the cracks had first shown. Driving away, the road stretched quiet under fading light. Jackson's voiceover carried the close. "Fraud doesn't begin with big scandals. It begins with small lies. A price tag ignored, a voice silenced, a customer misled. Left unchecked, those lies multiply until they feel normal. But the truth doesn't disappear. It waits for someone willing to see it, and someone brave enough to say it out loud. This time, it was a trainee stocking shelves. Next time, it might be you. A business survives when people believe in it. Not in slogans, not in quarterly reports, but in the simple promise that what you see is what you get. And when that promise breaks, leaders have a choice: ignore it or repair it. The headlights stretched across the asphalt. Jackson's hand rested steady on the wheel. This wasn't just about one store. It was about reminding every store, every customer, every employee, that fairness isn't optional. It's the system. Oh, the camera of memory lingered on a final image. Emily sliding a price tag into place, her hands steady, her voice guiding the next generation. A store rebuilt, not by profit, but by principle. And with that, the story closed not with applause, not with spectacle, but with the quiet certainty that justice, once restored, has to be protected every single day. Months passed, and the ripples from store number 47 spread further than Jackson imagined. the silent audits expanded across the entire chain. What began as a single red flag, a salesman doubling a price tag, became a company-wide reckoning. Patterns emerged. In some branches, it was inflated warranty fees. In others, hidden restocking charges that never reached corporate books. Small lies, repeated often enough, had carved holes in trust across the network. But this time, the system didn't look away. Every store manager received the same message from headquarters. Transparency isn't optional. Every adjustment is logged. Every role is verified. Every receipt must match the tag in front of the customer. Some managers grumbled. A few resigned quietly. But the majority adapted, and slowly, customers noticed the difference. At store number 47, the change was more visible than anywhere else. Emily had stepped into her new role as compliance trainer. Twice a week, she gathered new hires around the counter where everything had begun. She pointed to the price tags, then to the registers, repeating the same line Jackson had once said to her. "What you see is what you get, no exceptions." The trainees listened closely, perhaps sensing there was more weight behind her words than any handbook could capture. She didn't talk about Brad or Troy. She didn't need to. The lesson lived in the way she spoke with conviction earned, not borrowed. Jackson visited only once during those months, slipping in quietly. He stood near the back, unseen, watching Emily explain the audit protocols. He didn't interrupt. He didn't introduce himself. He just watched, satisfied, before leaving as silently as he came. Meanwhile, media outlets picked up whispers of the internal reforms. Articles appeared. Electronics chain tightens transparency after internal review. CEO quietly overhauls pricing system after discovery of fraud. There were no press conferences, no grand gestures. Just the facts, printed plainly, leaving readers to fill the silence with their own questions. Customers began sharing stories online. One wrote, "Went to store number 47 today. Prices matched exactly. Clerk even double-checked in front of me. Never seen that before." Another posted, "Finally feel like I'm not being hustled when I buy a laptop." It wasn't about headlines. It was about restoring something deeper confidence. One evening, in a quiet meeting with his senior team, Jackson summed it up in a single line. "We don't win loyalty with discounts," he said. "We win it with honesty." His executives nodded. They had heard similar lines before, but this time, the difference was tangible. The story of store number 47 had reached them too. They knew the weight of it. Emily's promotion was eventually announced company-wide. Her photo appeared in the internal newsletter, no flashy backdrop, just her in a plain polo, smiling shyly. The caption read, "From trainee to compliance trainer, proof that integrity builds the future." For most employees, it was just another email. But for the handful who had stayed silent during Brad's reign, it was a reminder that silence had cost them the chance to be the one standing in her place. Jackson read the newsletter alone in his office late at night. He closed his laptop and looked out over the city lights. For once, he felt no rush of victory, no urge to move to the next deal, just a quiet reassurance. Store number 47 wasn't perfect. Neither was the company. But for the first time in years, he believed they were on the right side of the ledger, not because of audits or protocols, but because one employee had chosen truth over fear. His closing thought lingered like a voiceover to himself, though it would later echo in the training videos sent to every new hire. Leadership isn't about catching every mistake. It's about creating a place where people don't feel forced to hide them. Trust is the product we sell, and if we lose that, no price tag can fix it. The screen faded in memory to Emily, guiding another group of new employees at the counter. She tapped the price tag once, firm but gentle, and the trainees nodded in unison. The story had started with a lie, but it was ending with a truth strong enough to carry forward. Winter came early that year. The air outside store number 47 was sharp, the glass doors fogging slightly as customers stepped in and out with bags tucked close against the wind. Jackson pulled his coat tighter as he approached. Not as CEO, not as the man who had suspended managers and dismantled shell accounts, but as someone who wanted to see the aftermath with his own eyes. No cameras, no entourage, just him. Inside, the store buzzed softly. Customers browsed without suspicion, receipts matched price tags, and employees greeted shoppers with a calmness that felt earned, not rehearsed. At the center, near the same laptop display where it had all begun, Emily stood with two new hires. She was patient, showing them how to check the system against the tag, making them repeat the process until it was natural. Her voice carried the steadiness of someone who had seen both sides' fear and honesty, and chosen the latter. Jackson didn't step forward right away. He watched for a moment, letting the scene unfold. Emily didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on the trainees, reminding them, "If something doesn't look right, you speak up. Always. No job is worth hiding the truth." The words landed heavy in his chest. They were the same principle he had built the company on, spoken now through someone who had lived it in the quiet corners of a store. When she finally turned and saw him, her eyes widened slightly. She straightened, almost nervous. "Mr. Reeves." He raised a hand gently. "Jackson," he corrected. "Titles don't matter here. Only actions do." They spoke briefly by the counter. Emily thanked him quietly for the promotion, though her voice carried more gratitude for something else, the chance to be heard. "I thought telling the truth would make me a problem," she admitted. "But it turned out it made me useful." Jackson smiled faintly. "Useful isn't the word. Necessary island." For a moment, the store around them seemed to fade, leaving only the echo of that truth. He left without ceremony, walking back into the cold. The neon sign glowed behind him, no longer a place of hidden fees and silent fear, but a reminder that integrity could be rebuilt. As he started his car, his thoughts narrowed into a single closing line, one that would later appear in company training, but in that moment was only for himself. "Fairness isn't a gift we give. It's a duty we keep every price tag, every receipt, every day." The headlights cut through the winter dusk. Store number 47 faded into the distance, but the lesson it carried was not leaving with him. It was staying, living, repeating, in the hands of those who had chosen truth over silence. The road stretched dark, the hum of the engine steady, as Jackson drove away from store number 47 for the last time. The lights of the city flickered in the distance, but his focus was on the silence inside the car, the kind of silence that comes after truth has been spoken and justice set in motion. He thought back to the beginning. The glowing tag that read $849, the salesman's lie spoken with confidence, the hesitation in Emily's eyes. A simple moment, almost forgettable, yet it had unraveled months of deceit and reshaped the course of an entire company. Big scandals don't always start with explosions. Sometimes they start with a whisper. In the weeks that followed, Jackson's words became part of corporate training. New hires heard his voiceover in a plain video with no music, no flashy graphics. Fraud doesn't survive because it's clever. It survives because people stay quiet. If you see something wrong, speak. If you know the truth, share it. Our business isn't laptops or receipts. It's trust. And without trust, nothing we sell has value. Those words echoed through warehouses, sales, floors, back offices. Managers repeated them. Employees quoted them. Slowly, the culture bent back toward honesty. But for Jackson, the victory wasn't in the audits or the protocols. It was in the look on a trainee's face when she realized telling the truth hadn't ruined her. It had saved her. It had saved the store. He remembered Emily's words. "I thought telling the truth would make me a problem, but it turned out it made me useful. Useful. Necessary." The difference between survival and collapse. That night, as the highway signs blurred past, Jackson's final reflection came clear. A company doesn't collapse because of competition. It collapses when the truth is treated as optional. Integrity isn't a slogan. It's the receipt we hand to every customer, the paycheck we give to every employee, the promise we live by every single day. The camera of memory lingered once more inside store number 47, Emily at the counter, her hand sliding a price tag into place. The number on the screen matched perfectly, as it should. A customer smiled, relieved, and walked away holding a receipt that told the truth. No applause, no spectacle, just fairness, restored quietly, one transaction at a time. And that is how an undercover visit, a blatant lie, and a single voice refusing to stay silent, reshaped an entire company. Not with noise, not with revenge, but with the quiet power of truth.